programs in computing, the computing part of computing and academic studies over the next half hour or so. But you won't just hear from me. We also have a couple of students here as well to represent the student experience. We've got Dustin and Eli, and so we'll hear from them in a little bit, and they'll tell you what really goes on. Hopefully it won't contradict what I say too much. And we also have some of my colleagues as well. Elsie, the program head for a bachelor's degree program that I'll touch on, and Shebia, our industry liaison person. It's a relatively small group in here. There is time set aside for QA at the end, but if you, unless we get a lot more people coming, if there's something you want to ask me as we're going along, let me know, and I'll try to answer it right then, or we'll defer it till the Q&A session. And online, I know there's a facility for being able to ask questions through a chat, and other of my colleagues are online helping to answer some questions there. Sound okay? All right. So let's get started. So this slide here might be the reason why people are here and why people are joining us online. I think it's generally well known that the tech industry in BC is growing, and so much so that we see stories in the news, in the mainstream media, all the time about things that are happening in BC and in Vancouver, in particular in technology. There's some of the stats that we have. So these aren't just our stats, ones that we come up with to make things look good. BC Tech Jobs, we partner with the BC Tech Association, and BC Tech Jobs is also a third-party website that helps connect employers with people looking for work. This is so generally higher wages, growth in employment. One of the stories that people often hear about technology is that employers struggle to hire people, which sounds really strange, because in other parts of the economy you hear about how tough it is to find work, and in technology, broadly defined, that there's the opposite problem. Employers are struggling to find enough qualified people, and then that problem, to put it that way, is a problem, gets exaggerated when you also hear in the mainstream media about how, I say mainstream just to mean, it's not specialist IT or computing industry media. You'll hear these things when you listen to the CBC News at night about how Amazon is going to open a new office here already, in addition to the one that they have here, and they're looking around North America to open another headquarters, and Vancouver's put in a proposal for that. Microsoft has a substantial presence here, and they're looking to add more people. And those are just two household name companies, not to mention all of the other organizations that are here and growing and looking to add people. One of I think the fastest growing area of the economy in the province. Lots and lots of people, lots and lots of roles, technical roles, but also non-technical roles as well. So it's very exciting times in this industry in the province right now. And so tech, I said, tech broadly defined before, so we'll go into it a bit more in a second. The area that I represent in the program that I'm the program head for currently is about software development, and we'll distinguish that a bit in a couple of minutes. But tech can include some more things. Information and communication technology is going to be kind of the main thrust of what we talk about today. But there's also clean tech. There are software development and IT opportunities in clean tech. There's a growing clean tech sector within tech in Vancouver and in the Lower Mainland. IT and engineering services, yes, as well. Life sciences, a little bit more specialized, but some roles there. As well, and interactive and digital media definitely growing. Speaking about Microsoft announcements, Microsoft does at least some of the development for their HoloLens product here. And they're just one of the stories in behind interactive and digital media growth. Microsoft is HoloLens here. Sony ImageWorks is here, also very near where Microsoft is. So lots. It's not this sector isn't one that's just dominated by one large firm or one specialist area. It's pretty broad and growing and developing all the time. So that's kind of the pitch, but again, I assume that lots of people already know that, and that's why you're here, right? The sector is growing. Companies can't find enough people, but you know what you can't find? You can find seats right down here in front. Companies can't find enough people, and so folks are looking to train or to retrain to come into this field. And so that's where we come in to try and help with that. And part of our new branding, computing for a complex world, you would have seen lots of messaging about that in the bus shelters, and if you came through the campus today. So let's talk a little bit about what BCIT computing is about, because we have a couple of different facets to what it is that we do. So who are we? We are, like it says there, largest computing and IT education provider in Western Canada, and continuing to grow all the time. Definitely a leader in addressing the demand for tech talent in BC. We have very close relationships with industry, from the largest companies that I mentioned down to entrepreneurial companies that didn't exist yesterday, and all the tiers in between. We have very good relationships with government and the Tech Association, and even our partners in post-secondary. Over 30 applied programs, so lots of programs, and the word that's most important for us in there is about applied. And that's really the thing that distinguishes our programs from what you might find at other post-secondaries, is the applied part. We're very much about not just providing a theoretical framework, but about enough of a theoretical framework that we can enable our students and graduates to go and apply the things that they're learning, because that's really what it comes down to for industry, is what can you do. They're not super interested in what you know. In some cases they are, but for the most part, they really want to know what can you do. And that's what we're helping our students and our graduates learn and to be able to show. Well-recognized credentials, yes. You know, a credential from BCIT in computing does open doors to a career in this field. It's not the only thing that students and graduates need to do, but it definitely is a help. And there are wrong choices to make in terms of pursuing credentials, but our credentials are well recognized. And high satisfaction and employment rates, well, hopefully you'll hear the students in our program talk about that, but some of the employment rates were shown on the previous slide too. Very, very high employment rates for our graduates, the ones that they're actually looking for work in this field after they finish our programs. So we're big. We're well recognized. We continue to grow, and we continue to evolve. That's the nature of the information on here. So we have several full-time programs, and we'll talk about those first. We also have part-time studies, and part-time studies is an important component of our full-time programs, but also a whole set of programs on their own. And so we'll touch briefly on part-time studies as well, from both aspects, how it supports and enables what we do in full-time, but also the kinds of things that students can pursue in part-time studies. As well. And we'll also touch, briefly, but we'll touch on our high-tech professional programs. We'll talk about what distinguishes those from both our regular full-time programs and part-time studies, and who those might be for. And then as we get towards the end, we'll talk a little bit about admissions. So that is how people can come into our full-time programs, and what they might require. We still okay? Okay so far? Okay. Yeah, I might end up doing this kind of like a class. I'm not used to just talking at people all the time. I like to ask questions and get feedback. So it's a bit weird for me to just be talking at you. Okay, so in our full-time programs, so we have a few. So I'm going to hit you with a whole bunch of acronyms. I can't help it. That's this industry. We're going to go through a bunch of different programs. We've got, I mentioned full-time, part-time, and HTP. Within those two, there's different layers. So be forewarned that you're going to hear a lot of different kinds of terms. But absolutely, you can ask me questions to clarify that stuff. And all of this is also backed up further on our website as well. Oh yeah, and one thing that I neglected to mention, so we are streaming this information session on our website, and it will also be recorded and available at some point in the near future for review if you want to come back and hear again what it is that I said, all the solid gold nuggets that I'm sharing with everybody. So let's start by looking at the Computer Systems Technology Diploma program. So that's the one that I'm the program head for. Okay, so in a nutshell, Computer Systems Technology is the software development program. So this is our 2-year full-time program. We do have a part-time option for this, but the one I'm speaking about right now is our full-time program. 2-year full-time program, very intensive, structured, cohort-based, focused on software development. So terms that people throw out there now, coding or programming, that's what this is about. So creating software, understanding what that means, what goes into it, how you do it, what organizations are looking for, how you understand what it is that organizations are looking for, going from zero to being able to produce working software, basically at just about every single step through our program. And the kinds of jobs that graduates of our programs are being prepared for, there are so many different kinds of job titles that industry uses, and we sometimes have heated discussions about that ourselves. But the typical kinds of things that you'll hear, just software developer, or different variations of software developer, games developer, web application developer, mobile application developer, software development support, including QA and testing. So if an organization kind of splits up how software development is done into its different components, systems analyst for systems analysis, and others. There's all sorts of different variations on these names, but fundamentally it's software development and software development related roles. Okay. So you might learn what Citrix receiver is all about and how to troubleshoot that system. So like I said, 2 years, structured, cohort-based. One key differentiator as well between the nature of our program and something that you might find at other post-secondaries is when I say structured, what I mean is that when students come into our program, we pick all of their courses for them. We register them in all of their courses, and they move through all of those courses and have to complete all of those courses in order to graduate. And it's very focused and very applied, like I mentioned before. So it's not the case where students come in and kind of meander through a bunch of breadth requirements. You come in right at the start into the intensity of the program that we build for students. Okay. I thought somebody might have a question about that, so I wanted to try and address it proactively. What we do within that structure, where I said that we select courses for students, we structure the program and determine how students proceed through it, is we have specializations, what we call options with a capital O, in the second year of the program, right? The second year of our 2-year program. And so towards the end of the first year, students select which option or options they'd like to go into in the second year, and then we allocate, and we have options across those 10 areas. And these are, like it says, an opportunity for students to go a bit more deeply into a particular area of focus. So what's going on in the second year with these options, students are doing a core set of common courses. So all students in the program are doing a core set of common courses. But they are also in options, which is a subset of courses that they're doing together as part of a cohort of students. And we have 10 of those. Yeah, you've got a question. 6 to 7, depending on how you want to measure it. Well, then we need to make it harder again. So the question was, how many courses are there per semester? It's 6 or 7, depending on how you want to look at it. So these second-year specializations, I won't talk about every single one of them, but some of the ones to call out, they're very closely related in terms of being about good software development, software engineering practice. So there is a lot of commonality in terms of what they talk about, but there's also different areas of focus, like our database option, which is really about data analytics, data communications and internetworking, how computers talk to each other, to put it that way. And also, we're very excited about the new options that we've launched and are in the process of launching. We've launched one recently in terms of cloud computing. So cloud is a term that gets kicked around a lot when people talk about software these days. Anybody in here ever hear about the cloud when it comes to software? Yeah. Anybody in here ever use Gmail? Yeah, that's a cloud application. So it's just software distributed over the web. But that's a big deal in software. You guys hear of this company called Amazon? I think they're going to be a big deal. Did you know Amazon's a software company? Did you guys know that? They're an everything company, but they're a big software company too. And so how you deploy software using Amazon, you guys use Netflix? Netflix users in here? Netflix runs on Amazon. And the way that you deploy software onto the cloud changes the way that software is distributed. This is a big deal in software. So we have an option that goes more deeply into developing software for the cloud. We're also launching an option that's going to run for the first time in January about artificial intelligence and machine learning. So that's also something you might have heard about how the robots are coming for our jobs. So we're going to enable students to help with that. And we're also going to run a new option starting for the first time next September in terms of tech entrepreneurship. So directly focused on helping students solve problems for society generally, rather than focusing on solving problems for specific companies. So very, very exciting, and we're going to have to develop more and continuing evolving this as we go forward as well. And the application, like I said before, so we talk a lot about applications in terms of things that people develop, but also application, that applied learning. So not just theoretical, not just doing things in terms of academic projects, but trying to apply it. We have a cooperative education structure in both our CST diploma and our CIT diploma that I'll talk about in a second. Cooperative education, paid job placements. It's select qualified students after year one. The bottom line there is that we don't have enough capacity in our co-op programs to enable all students to take it. So we have to have a competitive admissions model into co-op, but students there go out onto 2 academic terms to work with a company, usually a local company, for pay. And in our co-op program, students can end up working with small and medium-sized companies that you might have never heard of, all the way up to large global companies that you also may have never heard of, but are really, really important in your everyday life. 4 to 8 terms. Usually co-op is 2 terms. But I said before that in CST and also in CIT, there aren't co-op spaces for every student that might want them, but every student in our program, regardless of whether they do co-op, does industry practicum projects. And so what that means is that we collect projects from industry, so from companies out there, software development projects, and we have students within the structure of a course form a team and work on that project for that company. And in the computer systems technology program, students do that twice. So every student that goes through CST, regardless of whether they do co-op, has actual industry experience that they can put on the industry experience part of their resume at the end of the program. And that's critical. It's critical because it's possible for people to come into our program straight from high school. And we have lots of people who do. And by the time you get to the end of 2 years, you haven't just learned about software development, they've had at least 2 chances to go through and apply it for real with a real organization and industry. And I like those because I used to work in industry, but there's no way that I can simulate all the variability that comes with an actual industry project. And I think it's a huge learning opportunity. So that's what we mean by applied. A very strong focus on application and not just academics and theory. Although we do have also a very strong focus on academics and a theoretical foundation as well. But we move very much into this. So what does that mean in terms of application? We still good? Okay. So that's CST, computer systems technology. Let's have a look at some of our other programs. Okay, so we're going to look at CIT, the Computer Information Technology Diploma. So CIT is also a 2-year full-time intensive program, but whereas CST is focused on development, CIT is focused on administration to make it as high level as possible to try and boil it down. So where CST is focused on the roles and the people and the organizations that create software to help organizations and society solve problems. CIT we can think of as focused on those kinds of roles and organizations that might help companies administer, to run, to maintain their IT infrastructure. And a broad program focusing on emerging tools and technologies. So one way to think about that, emerging, I talked about the cloud. The cloud is having a really important, profound impact in terms of the way that companies are structured and software is distributed. So very much in our IT program, if students are learning how to administer that stuff, they need to know how that's done in the cloud. They need to know how you use Amazon Web Services, and Microsoft Azure, and Google Cloud, and those kinds of things. And so the graduates of that program suited for many roles in a typical IT department. So helping companies do what it is that companies do. And they go into the workforce, all the roles for CST were software development related roles. These ones are administration and support related roles. So things like system and network administration. Web development as well. Lots of overlap between kind of the core web dev functionality, core web dev skills that students would learn in CST as well as in CIT. Support, administration, and systems integration. How do you get different systems that might even be in different places with different functions to talk together to each other, so that when you go to use your Netflix service, that it knows that you've paid your bill and it will serve up your TV shows to you. There's an integration in there somewhere in the background. So it's those kinds of things, making systems talk to each other so that organizations can do all the things that they want to do. So this program, foundational technology skills, I'll call out just a couple out of those. Some of them were reiterated or introduced rather on the previous slide in terms of the kinds of roles, things around support, administration. There is the foundational technology skills. Students in the CIT program are exposed to a little bit of software development skills because they need to have an understanding of that and an exposure to that. But also very much a focus on that the breadth about administration. Agile development is the de facto way that software and software-related projects are run. So that's a key component of the program today. Cloud infrastructure, mentioned before, so how you might deploy and integrate to the cloud and not just develop stuff for the cloud. Data analytics and business intelligence, how you extract meaning from the vast amounts of data that we hear about companies extracting and keeping tabs on all the time. Right, that stuff is really, really important. And so there's a focus in terms of, in the CIT program, in terms of helping students understand the kinds of tools and approaches that organizations use to extract meaning from that data. DevOps is a hot term right now. It describes how an approach that's used for deploying software and developing software these days, as well as systems integration, mobile application development and deployment, all those kinds of things. So again, where CST is the development program, CIT is more of the administration program. There is a little bit of commonality, although we don't take courses together, there's a little bit of commonality at the beginning of the program, but then they very much diverge into their different areas. But also a very strong focus on application. So not just application in terms of mobile applications, again, application in terms of actually putting to use the kinds of skills that students are developing. There is optional co-op as well in CIT. We even now have students in CIT and co-op helping to support our IT services here at BCIT. They also do industry practicum projects. They're working on those right now, and an optional part-time internship too. So yeah, very much not just about the theories and the academics, but about how you apply those things, how organizations are applying those things now to solve the problems that they have. Again, 2 years, structured. They do have some flexibility for students in year 2 of the program, not options in the same way that we run in CST, but their students do have a little bit of flexibility. They take a core set of courses in year 2, but they have some choice with some other courses that they can take in the second year of the program to round out their studies. So those are our 2 key full-time day diploma programs, CST and CIT. And just so that I make sure that I note it, CST right now we admit 125 students 2 times a year. So we're bringing in 250 new students into the program every year, every academic year. And we're going to actually expand that. We're adding another 25 students in both of our September and January intakes starting in the fall of 2018. And CIT, by comparison, brings in 2 sets of students twice a year. So they'll bring in 50 students in September and another 50 in January. So scale is one thing that differentiates between the programs. And our CIT program runs at our downtown campus. If you've ever gone by there on Seymour Street between Dunsmuir and Pender, it's a great location. One thing I like about our downtown campus is it's almost literally overlooked by Amazon and Microsoft, and very nearby are other major software companies. And this is a view of our downtown campus. We've recently invested a fair amount of money in renovating the space. So if I didn't tell you it was a downtown campus, we might be able to get away with saying, oh, well, this is one of those cool high-tech office spaces in Vancouver that you hear about. So it's designed in part to kind of reflect what's going on in our industry right now, but also designed and built to enable a different kind of a learning model. In CST, students attend lectures and then they're in smaller labs working one-on-one with instructors. In CIT, the courses are in what's called kind of a flipped format, where students aren't really attending common lectures. They're doing a lot of self-study and self-driven learning, and then they come together in like a lab setting to work on the things that they've learned and to try and apply that with the guidance of one of our faculty members. That's also one other thing that I'm reminded to mention, is that different from what you might find in some other post-secondaries, the instructors who are delivering lectures in our program in CST, definitely for sure, are the same ones that will be running labs. So it's not the case where students will come and see a lecturer and then we delegate the labs, the hands-on component of the work, to somebody else. It's the same faculty members who are doing both the labs and the lectures. We divide that up because the workload is so great and the size of the student body is so great, but there's not that kind of a distinction. Look at how happy those guys are in the downtown space. So very much designed to be flexible. There's a whole wall that can be rolled away to create a larger space for events or other large kinds of sessions. Yeah, you've got a question.
You said that there's an optional practicum for CIT students.
Mm-hmm.
So that's optional based on like students decide whether they want to go, or the program decides that who wants to go?
Yeah, so the question was, there's an optional practicum component to CIT. Who decides? Is it the students or somebody else? So co-op it's up to the students whether they apply, and then we determine whether students are successful based on the applicants that we get for the co-op spaces. The industry project practicums are not optional. All students do those in CST and in CIT. And in CIT, the internships they do, those are optional. So that would be up to the discretion of the students to do. So 2 discretionary, 1 mandatory for CIT. In CST, it would be the co-op is optional, the industry practicum projects are not. Did that answer your question? Okay. Oh yeah, you can see there's no front in these classes in the downtown campus. You can't do what I'm doing. You can't have everybody looking at the front and deliver a lecture. Everything is displayed on those screens that are kind of distributed around the room. We're going to be running some courses. We're going to be admitting some sets and running some classes in CST at the downtown campus in next September as well. So that's very exciting. There's one of our instructors and our dean in the background there talking to some students. Okay, so we've talked about CST, we've talked about CIT, we've talked about our space downtown. We need to talk a little bit about some of our other programs as well. So Bachelor of Technology in Computer Systems. So students can ladder from our diploma. So that's one way to think about it. Laddering means that students can come in, finish our diploma program, and go on to do the degree program. 2 years in our diploma and an additional 2 years to complete our Bachelor of Technology degree. That can be done in 2 years full-time after our diploma. It can be done in part-time studies at night as well. Applied, again, very much a focus on application and career enhancement. It goes further and deeper, and in some cases more broadly as well, into skills that industry values. Still with an emphasis on the practical, but also includes courses in things like it says there, management, ethics, general studies. Another differentiator between our day school programs and things you might find in other post-secondaries is we don't have a lot of breadth requirements for the sake of having breadth. Anything that we have in our program that might be considered breadth is definitely very much focused on, applied, and directed towards enabling students and graduates to do the kinds of things that industry requires, like communication skills, for example. In the BTech program, there are 2 full-time specializations available. So that means if students are doing the Bachelor of Technology program during the day, they're in one of 2 streams. There are a number of part-time specializations that students would be enrolled in if they're doing the degree program in the evenings in part-time studies. Full-time 2 years, again, an additional 2 years laddered on top of our full-time diplomas. In part-time studies, they have up to 7 years to complete the program. So that's a very quick overview of our bachelor's degree. Part-time studies, I mentioned that I would touch on. The most extensive computing programs in BC. The breadth of the kinds of courses and programs that you can do in our part-time studies program is really staggering. 5,000 registrations per year. That means there's students in, not 5,000 students necessarily, because some students take more than one course, but 5,000 course registrations every year. And finally, tuned to market demand. The structure of our part-time studies program means that we can respond more quickly than we can in our full-time programs to what's going on in industry, tweak the courses, bring in new courses, and then sometimes we can fold those things back into our full-time programs. Like it says, just in time, fast track. So that means maybe if you're working in industry after having graduated from our programs and your organization goes in a different direction, or your boss tells you that it would be good to develop some skill set, chances are we can provide that training, and that can help with that career advancement or retraining for a career shift. A number of students in our part-time studies program, and also in the high-tech professional programs that I'll talk about in a second, mid-career people who've been working in industry in some field for a while, maybe wanting to change things up, whether they're in tech and they want to go into a different role, or they want to try and come into tech from somewhere else. It's also possible for students to do the computer systems technology diploma in part-time studies, or to start in part-time studies and then apply to come into the full-time program, or to start in the full-time program, and this becomes a little more difficult, but to start in full-time and complete in part-time. So there's a fair degree of flexibility there as well with our extensive part-time studies programs too. And I'm sure you've heard at some point in the past the messaging around BCIT and flexibility in our offerings, and that's one of the ways that we do that within computing. So high-tech professional programs. So what are these? So fast track, less than a year, run from our downtown campus in a variety of things: network administration and security, software systems developer, and the other ones that you can read there. The admissions requirements are a little bit different. If I can put it this way, I think that these programs would be a better fit for somebody who might be in a mid-career position, who has some industry expertise under their belt in whatever industry that might be, and is looking to retrain or to go to the next level, but can't necessarily take 2 years to go through our full-time programs. And as we'll see in a second, they can help to ladder into the degree. Awesome. Okay, so let's talk about admissions. I'm running over time. So for our diploma program, CST and CIT, it's competitive, to say the least. For this past September, we received 4 applications for every space in the computer systems technology program. One way we're trying to address that is by adding more seats, so it's definitely competitive. CIT, the application stats are becoming similar. Lots of people wanting to get into our programs. The criteria there: English 12 and Math 12, Math Pre-Calculus 12. That's it. 67% minimum. So what that means, but let me try and add a bit more color there. People will say, "Oh, I've been working in industry for all of these years. Do you take that into account?" We don't. I have a prior degree. How do you take that into account? We don't. It's English 12 and Math 12. 67% is the stated minimum. The actual effective average over the last couple of terms for CST, and CIT is converging in that area as well, is in the high 80s. So what that means is that you can have a really high mark in one area and a relatively lower mark in another area, But the kinds of people who are applying and getting in successfully have a relatively high mark in both English and math. Okay, so competitive. What I always tell people, especially applicants who are unsuccessful, is if you are unsuccessful in your application to CST, you can start, like I said a second ago, in our part-time studies programs. And you can actually mirror for a good long while our program in full-time and then apply to come into the program in full-time. But it's a way for people to keep moving forward without just pinning all their hopes on getting into the program full-time. And again, CIT opening up spaces and offering admissions in September as well as in January now. Yeah. So the question was, why don't we consider those things? I'll give a really short answer and a slightly longer answer. The really short answer is that that we may end up moving there as we try and fine tune our admissions. So that doesn't exactly answer your question, but that's the most info that I can give you right now. One way that we do actually, in a way, incorporate people who have prior degrees or even other prior post-secondary is people can apply and use post-secondary marks in lieu of these English and math marks. So if you've taken courses in humanities at another post-secondary, for example, you can use those marks in lieu of high school marks. Applicants should use whichever marks give them the greatest advantage. But the bottom line is right now, we just look at those two factors. In our bachelor's degree program, also English 12, which you will have if you're admitted into CST, to complete the CST diploma or to complete the CIT diploma, or, and there's where relevant work experience can come in, an equivalent to the core of the CST diploma and relevant work experience. And so there's a lot of nuance in there, but that's one way that people can build on work experience that they've got, as long as it's relevant. Now you've got a question. Right now, no. So the question was, is there anything else that we take into account for admissions? No. It's English and math marks. What people can do to increase their chances of success while they're in the program, at least in CST, any kind of familiarity with programming helps smooth out the learning curve. Because otherwise that intensity that I talked about can be quite daunting. Yeah. So right now, the simple answer is that's the best that you can do, is to upgrade English and Math 12 marks. But also, again, you can start the program in part-time studies and be moving forward that way and apply to come in through what's called advanced placement into a later stage of the program. That doesn't change the application, the requirements, but it's a way to keep progressing. Maybe I can hold the questions, and I'll get to the end of my comments here, and then we'll come back to that. Help me remember. So our deadline, so for September, next September, we've already opened up our applications, and I can tell you that business is brisk from the 1st of November. So we'll be accepting applications through to next March. In CIT, they'll actually be looking to, they'll do a cut partway through the process. In CST, we'll look at all the applicants that we receive in March and make our admissions decisions then. And then shortly after that, we'll reopen the door for accepting applications for our January intake, January 2019. And the intakes I mentioned already before, CST and CIT, we're both admitting students now in both September and January. In the Bachelor of Technology program and full-time, students come in September. In part-time studies, they can start year-round. Part-time studies, you can start year-round. Part-time studies runs on a trimester system. So there's even courses running during the spring and summer. Okay, and all of the things that I just outlined you can find by navigating through our website, and that's our URL right there, bcit.ca/computing. Okay, so I went way through my time. So maybe at this point, I haven't forgotten your question. Right? We're going to come back to it. Okay, but maybe I'll turn it over now to our students, to Dustin and to Eli, and they can completely dismantle everything that I just said. Why don't we start with you?
Cool. Thanks for that. Much appreciated. Actually, that's really cool. I didn't know that CST had a AI/machine learning thing coming up. That's pretty awesome, pretty exciting stuff. So yeah, I think I had some slides somewhere, but cool. Basically, Trevor went over a lot of the more general stuff, the more broad related to BCIT, and there's a lot to it. There's a lot of different programs, a lot of different things to consider when going to BCIT, and I kind of want to go more into the specific of what I do. And so I'm in the Bachelor of Technology program, game development option, and I kind of want to just go over why I chose this, and then maybe if you're interested, I know a lot of people here are probably more looking into CST and some of the diploma options, but this is something to consider after you're out of the diploma options as well, and it's also pretty cool, I find. So give me a second while I get my slides up here. Yeah, that's it. Cool. So relatively quick on this. Sweet. I'll definitely be available afterwards to talk to anyone that's actually interested or to reach out to me. I'm always open for questions. Anything you want to know about the program, I'd be more than happy to answer. And so my journey is basically going to be this. I really like making games. I always thought it was a really cool thing. I never thought that I could find a career in it. But after stumbling into it really just a few years ago, I found that it's a huge passion of mine, and also I'm sure it would be anyone that's even considering it, I would definitely say something to check out. Thank you. Basically, I worked at EA for a year. I made, actually really cool. There's the EA studio, EA Burnaby, which is their largest studio, actually. EA Vancouver, they call it now, because that sounds cooler than EA Burnaby, I guess. But it's about 2 blocks down from here, so it's actually really convenient. So I actually started going to BCIT, taking classes while I was working at EA here. And basically, I started working as a technical artist, which was, I was making tools, I was working on a little bit of development on the game, but I wasn't really deep in it. I wasn't doing a lot of the software development, a lot of the engineering that I really wanted to do. I wanted to move forward with that. And so I started looking at my options to go forward. I wanted to get into artificial intelligence in games. I wanted to get more in the engineering. And so I actually checked out BCIT, and that kind of brought me to coming down to their degree programs and checking out I could get a degree from BCIT in 2 years, which really appealed to me. I thought that was really cool. Another thing about BCIT that was appealing to me as well was that they were recognized. Some really interesting things. I talked to some further education after BCIT, talking about getting my master's, things like that at other universities, and they all recognized the Bachelor of Technology, and it would transfer basically directly towards getting a master's. Also, since BCIT has a recognized engineering program, we actually can go through NAFTA on graduating from here, so you can work in the States relatively easy coming out of it. Also, after checking it out, there's a lot of things that really appealed to me in the program itself inside of games development. Obviously, I really wanted to get more into games development. I wanted to learn more things. I wanted to get more in depth, do more projects that you can't really do during work. It's kind of difficult to learn while you're working every day, working a full-time job. And so some of the things that I really got me excited about it was that the bachelor's was fast. It was a 2 years bachelor's, which is awesome because I already had a lot of knowledge coming into it. And I just wanted to sort of work on my skills and have some really experienced instructors kind of guide me towards the rest of the things that I need to know, the more advanced techniques. Like I said, it recognized, kind of covered that. Open-ended. So one of the cool things is that it's really kind of like just lets you go wild for most of the courses. There's instructors around, really smart people that'll be able to help you and guide you towards what you want to do. But for the most part, they say, hey, Do you want to make some cool AI? Go for it. Just pick out what you want. See whatever you want to do for the assignment. You want to try really hard? Go for it. If you want to sleep at home, I mean, I guess you could do that too. But you're not going to get much out of the program. You do that. And practical, yeah, again, it's very hands-on. There are definitely theory-based things in the BTech program, which are great. Some math courses, some advanced programming techniques. But for the most part, it's project-based. So you'll be working on a lot of projects, a lot of games. I made some pretty cool games during it. Worked on lots of game engines, lots of advanced techniques. I'd be happy to go over that if you're interested in that. You can come talk to me. A lot of the advanced stuff has been pretty awesome so far. So yeah, so far I am in my second year in the Bachelor of Technologies, coming up to the end. Got finals week coming up, which I'm not super excited for, but that's okay. And coming up in this next semester, we'll also have a practicum. And so that's part of the Bachelor of Technology game development option. At least we have a practicum, which is essentially you come up with a really big project. It takes you about 420 hours, I think, is the stated time that you should be working on it. And you pitch it to them. And as long as it's somehow incorporating what you've learned during the program, they'll usually say, hey, that's cool. And then you just start working on it right away by yourself. And there's a lot of, it's pretty great because it really kind of pushes you towards doing something you've always really wanted to do, which I have things right here. This is actually what I'm planning on doing, which is swarm AI, because I really like the idea of having like swarms I can control and kind of program to talk to each other. And so this is what I'm going to be doing my practicum on most likely. And it's really cool because even though I'm in the games development option, I love games, and I really want to make AI for games, there's open to explore other areas that I'm also into. And that kind of comes back to it being open-ended. And so there's also some really cool things my classmates are doing I want to touch on here. So I'm doing the swarm logic. One of my classmates is doing, he's making his own blockchain and making his own cryptocurrency. He's actually using in a game. It's pretty cool. EEGs, so stuff you like wear on your head and detects brain signals. I got another classmate doing that for their practicum to like detect input so you can play games with your brain. Lots of VR and AR as well. It's pretty popular. And just last ones. Is it hard and is it worth it? Those are kind of big questions for the BTech program. Specifically, you just come out of CST, perhaps you've just spent 2 years, or maybe you're like me and you're coming from a job and you're coming from the industry and you're thinking, hey, is this actually going to get me somewhere? And the truth is that it's what you put into it. It's like a lot of things in life. The BTech program can be there for you. It can make you work really, really, really hard if you want it to. There are sometimes you're sometimes able to coast by if you wanted to, again, but there's also, like this semester specifically and coming up onto my next, they get really in your face. I don't even think you really can coast even if you wanted to, but for the most part, the more you try, the more you're going to get out of the program. And finally, before you end up deciding on what to do, obviously, just think it over for yourself and see if this is something that you desire. Just really actually consider it and don't just jump into things. If you want to work in games, or if you have a specific career that you're looking into and you think that a bachelor's could help you move there, then this is definitely something to consider. Also, check out other programs as well. The BTech program is amazing. There's lots of really cool things with it, but don't stumble into it without knowing what's around you. And like I mentioned before, BTech program has options to move on to master's degrees at other institutions, things like furthering education, stuff like that. And it's also pretty awesome here. And again, there's my email address, dustin.lunnington@gmail.com. You feel free to message me if you want to write that down or take a picture or whatever. If you're interested in this kind of thing, I am always open for questions, very candid answers. So feel free to send me messages. Yep, and that's everything unless someone has a question right now they'd like me to answer. Cool. Okay, I think I'll pass it off to Eli or Trevor here, and you can pass it to Eli. Oh, thank you. Oh, nice claps. We probably want that thing. Here you go.
Yeah. Cool. So hey guys, my name is Eli Shields. I am a first-year student in CST, the diploma, and I will show you my little presentation. Trevor, do you know where the play button is? Is this it? Slideshow. Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, so being a CST student, being a CST student. Okay, that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. So I am in the second semester. I'm in the second semester of my first year. And so how that works. Oh, you need to hear me? Okay. Is this okay? Cool. So I'm in the second semester, my first year. So I started in January of 2017, did semester 1, had the summer open, and then in September this year, I came back for the second semester. In a month from now, in January of 2018, I'm going to be doing co-op at SAP, which is a big tech company that I'll talk about later. And that's for 8 months. So that's 8 months of work experience in the middle of my diploma. And Trevor mentioned that to you. And that co-op experience is a really big part of why CST is a great program and why you get so much out of it during just the 2 years you're doing it. And then I'll come back in September of next year, and I'll finish my second year. So there on the right side, you see a little bit about me. I've tried a few different things, and CST is so far seemed like it's a really great opportunity, really great program. So let's talk a little bit about what you're actually going to be getting out of this program and giving to it. Of course, it costs some money. You have to give 2 years, maybe more, of your life to it, and it takes a heck of a lot of hard work. This is definitely the hardest thing I've done. I mean, there's not a lot, but there are kids there are people who sign up and decide it's not for them after a few months and they drop out. So it's definitely important to be willing to commit to it, be willing to dedicate a lot of hours to it, really feel like this is something you could enjoy doing for a couple years while you're in school, and then for a few decades while you're having your career move forward. But what are you going to get from the program? So Trevor, told you a little bit about the different options, the different types of programs, but for computer systems specifically, what you're going to have is lectures that teach you about the fundamentals of computing, the fundamentals of building software that's actually useful for enterprise or useful for people to use on different platforms like their phone, their PC. And you're going to actually learn how to implement those fundamentals through a lot of coding. You're going to get a lot of assignments. You're going to have weekly labs where you're going to expect it to be building mini programs. Every week, you're going to build larger programs that are going to be your assignments, which will be due one every 3 weeks, once every month. And you're going to get feedback on those. They look through all of your code. Every line, they'll read it, they'll compile it, they'll see what errors are output, and they'll give you feedback. They'll tell you how you can be doing it better. So this program is, as you'll see on the next slide, it's really not about you learning by just sitting in a lecture hall of 300 people and just listening and listening and listening and absorbing. I know for me and all my friends, and for those of you who sign up, you'll find that you learn by doing. And I'll definitely get back to that on the next slide. A respected employable credential. There are a few different ways to look at that. I mean, one way to look at it is that anyone who goes to school for CS can get a job. But, if you look at the numbers that Trevor talked about of tens and tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of jobs being created in IT over the next few years, and then only, 10,000, 15,000 people graduating from maths and maths and CS programs every year. So there's definitely a shortage of students who have the credentials to work in IT. But one thing that's great about BCIT is that it actually prepares you to not just have a certificate, a piece of paper. It actually prepares you to go and show up to the job and work it and be effective. And this is not a new program. CST has been running for a while. Some of our lab instructors graduated from CST in the 90s, so it's been around. And so it's respected. People out there working in the tech community in Vancouver, they look at a CST, Computer Systems Technology Diploma. They look at a BCIT Computer Systems experience as something that is quality there. There's quality there. And then the last line, great friends with similar interests. It's not 2 years of only school, not 2 years of just typing out code on your computer. You will make good friends. You'll find that they're interested in a lot of the same things as you and interested in a lot of different things. For instance, I have no interest in video games, and a ton of my friends have a lot of interest in video games. But I really like to watch what's going on down in Silicon Valley. The big tech companies, obviously, there's a lot of change happening, and our lives as just regular folks with fantastic tech we've got in our pockets. And then when you look on a bit of a bigger scale with what's happening with our cars, maybe bring automation to the roads pretty soon. So you're going to find that there will be students who are interested in talking about these things, and your instructors might be interested in talking about these things with you as well. So learning in CST, I kind of mentioned this before, but it's pretty much going to come down to you spending a ton of time on your computer, programming, persistence, try something, it fails. You try something else, it fails. You spend a lot of time Googling, looking on Stack Overflow for how other people did it. You Control F to search through your textbook, and it's just a lot of persistence. It's a ton of time sitting at your desk. I mean, on the left, that's Neo. That's like the opening scene from The Matrix, a pretty good movie. And then on the right, that is a BCIT lab from the 80s, the 90s. I don't know. I was probably like 1 when that photo was taken, but they have upgraded the chairs and they've upgraded the machines. But I think the fundamental way that you learn in this program, that you learn in CST, comes down to the same thing. You know, they teach you the fundamentals. They give you projects, a lot of projects that you're expected to complete pretty much to perfection, and expected to complete them with constraints. You don't have enough time and you don't know enough to do it perfectly, which is probably pretty similar to how it is in the real world. Time constraints, knowledge constraints, and then in the group projects, you'll find yourself sometimes getting to work with your friends and you chose to work with them, and then sometimes you have to work with people in a group who you're not so similar to, and who have a different working style than you. Maybe one of you is a stronger communicator than the other, but the other person seems like a genius compared to you. You know, they'll write a method in 4 lines and you write one in 40. So everyone's different, and this program definitely gives you an opportunity for group work and solo work. But yeah, it's intensive. This is tough. Like this is not a joke of a program. It's really tough. So skills you'll develop, it's computer systems, so you are going to learn how computer systems work and how you can build computer systems, specifically software, which is a word that Trevor kept saying, and that's pretty much what this is, software programming. But this is software programming for different platforms. So you can do software programming for Java that you can run on a PC, or you'll learn web development, which you know, we had a Practicum project where in 1 month we built a web app that is supposed to be used on the phones and on your mobile device, and our client was the city of Vancouver. So we pretty much had 1 month to build a web app project for them, and that was after we'd been in school for 4 months. So yeah, different opportunities to work with different technologies, bit of database, version control. If any of you have done any coding with other people, you would have been exposed to a tool like Git, and that's really just, I mean, that's a key part of being a professional developer. You're writing code. You can't just put on a USB stick and carry it to someone else's desk. You have to have a structured, formal way to share your code with them, to update it, and then share that update with them. And BCIT, CST, definitely teaches you how to work with version control. Professional skills. Okay, cool. Solving problems with technology. We're working on a simulation right now in our 2nd level Java class where we're building a simulated world with different inhabitants, herbivores, omnivores, plants, carnivores. They all have different states, alive, dead. They all have different behaviors. A herbivore eats a plant, a carnivore eats a herbivore, but not a plant. So, you know, you look at this and you're like, when am I going to ever write a program that has to model all these different animals out in the wild? But this fundamental, like this fundamental way of thinking about different objects in a world, you could think about it on the highway. You have 18-wheelers, you have motorcycles, you have pickup trucks that are cutting off little Toyota Corollas. It's the way of thinking that they train you to get familiar with and to learn how to build a program that that models that effectively. That's something that I think CST does really well. Group communication, I already mentioned that. Prototype ideas, that's an important skill because this is more of a hard skill. This is STEM, right? Science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. This is a hard skill program. You're not studying marketing. You're not going to spend all your time writing business plans and putting together pitch decks here. So what's cool about this skill is that when you go out in the workforce, if you have your own idea that you think your boss or some other people on a different team than yours should hear about, you can just write something up, put it together, and show them what you're thinking about instead of, you know, just sketching it out, pencil and paper. Creativity. People probably don't think of programming as the most creative profession, but it is, or at least they give us opportunities to be creative during school here. On the you know, creative in small ways, like how you name your objects, how you build them, what states and behaviors you give them, and how you implement that, how you connect objects to each other. And then on larger levels, I mean, that web app I was telling you about that we built for the city of Vancouver, we had free reign. They pretty much said, here's a theme, build it. We came up with the design ourselves. We pulled, made 3-4 different features ourselves, came up with the name, had to come up with the logo. So we did everything ourselves for that. And as you get deeper in the program, I mean, particularly it seems if you continue on to the BTech, which I don't know much about, it seems like there's more and more opportunity for the program to open up in directions that you want it to open up in. Okay, so this is my upcoming co-op placement. Who here has heard of SAP? Okay, so yeah, like the people who are not under 25 haven't heard of it, but the people who have been out there in the workforce, seems like a lot of them have. SAP is a massive company. It's German, and they build enterprise software that pretty much every major company you know of runs on, and a lot of minor companies use it too. So I got a job there, and I got a job there because the co-op office here at BCIT presented us the top 50 students in my intake of 125, so top 50 students by grades had the opportunity, like Trevor said, to apply to work for a co-op placement with a Vancouver tech company. And the BCIT's co-op office gave us a list of all these different jobs, and we applied to them. I applied to more than 20, and I got a sweet job. And now I went from like working at a bank in a stuffy office a year and a bit ago, and moving out here where I didn't really know anyone, to working for a massive tech company, making more than double minimum wage for an internship, which is pretty sweet. And I'm going to be doing hands-on work. I'm not going to be sitting there fetching coffees. It's, the work that I'll be doing and the work that my team will be doing is really important to SAP's work. They have development teams that are building their products. They're writing code to create new products or to update them, upgrade them, fix issues that clients are having. But when they're writing that code, it's just, they're writing plain text in a text editor. You have to build that. You have to compile it into executable code that clients can actually run on their machines, whether it's servers or local clients like a laptop, or like tablets and mobile devices and all that stuff. So yeah, it's pretty cool, and CST really gives you great opportunities to come out of it, not just feeling like a bookworm who stayed in their room for 2 years. So I would say that that's definitely something you should come away from tonight thinking about, that this is a program that's giving you applicable skills and a real opportunity to get a great job after you graduate from it. And maybe that's the final point I'll make. You get to graduate from this program after 2 years. You do computer systems for 2 years, and then you come away with a diploma, which you're not going to have if you go to UBC or SFU for a 4-year bachelor degree. I left my first bachelor program after 2 years. I was studying economics, and I walked away with nothing. So that's fine. I decided that I wanted to move my career in a different direction. But if you decide after 2 years that you don't want to continue, that's fine. You leave, but you have a diploma, and you could get a job as a developer. If you're solid, you have a great shot of getting a job in Vancouver after those 2 years. And of course, you can continue on to the BTech, which seems awesome, and which there's a good chance I might do. All right, last 3 lines of my slides. Google stuff. Like, if you have questions, the first thing you should do is Google it. So there's a website for BCIT's program info. Just Google it. Codecademy, if you've never written any code before, it's a good place to practice some basic web dev languages or Python. If any of you use Reddit here, CS Career Questions is a great place to see people stressing about their interviews that are upcoming, and you can see the type of things that junior developers are thinking about as their careers start to take off. Any questions? Yeah.
Does the course require you to have like a good laptop?
So that's probably the main thing students think about. As their program's coming up to starting, they're thinking about, like, is my processor good enough? Do I have enough RAM? RAM's really important, actually, because programs take so much memory these days, but you would probably be fine. Like, anything above a Chromebook. You don't want a Chromebook, but yeah, I mean, what kind of computer do you have?
It's really old.
Okay. I mean, if you want, you can we can talk about this after, but I would say, like, you don't need to worry if you don't have like a $2,000 machine, most of the work you're going to be doing is text editing and web browsing. So, yeah, thank you very much.
So the official answer is yes, you need a laptop. You're required to have one for CIT. It's a BYO program and BYOD, and in CST you're also required to have a laptop. We do have computer labs here, but given the way that the work is done, it's not like the guy with the awesome mustache that Eli showed. It can happen outside of the computer labs and mostly does. So students really need to have laptop computers of their own, and we require that. And the way that I answer it is I basically say the highest spec computer you can afford. And RAM's really important. Other questions? Any other questions? Who has the next question? You had a question.
I just wanted to know if you got somebody in grade 12 now and they're evaluating based on final marks and he applies for next fall now, how are they evaluating?
Yeah, so the question is if somebody's in grade 12 now and doesn't yet have their final marks and wants to apply before our deadline at the beginning of March, how do we evaluate that? So we actually use for applicants in that position, we will look at midterm marks. And so that's all done through our admissions and applications page. So the URL that I showed was the bcit.ca/computing. Eli showed the one for CST. If you follow through the computing page into CST, there's a great big green button, how to apply, and through there you can start your application. But for students who are still in grade 12, yeah, you can use midterm marks. We, on our, one thing that you will find for CST is in our application, we say that we prefer people to have Comp Sci 11 or Comp Sci 12. That's not yet fully rolled out across the province, right? You've probably heard about, I think one of Eli or Dustin mentioned it, right? That now there's supposed to be coding in K to 12, so all across the grade school curriculum now. So students can do IT, I think it's called, 11 or 12 now, and there's also going to be courses in Comp Sci 11 and 12 introduced soon. And we'll prefer applicants who have that once they're able to get it. So follow up, and then I'll come over to you.
Do you consider awards for stuff like for programming classes for high school?
Do we consider awards for programming classes for high school? No. No. Right now we just look at math and English. That's it. Your question. Yeah, and so it's not programming; it's Comp Sci, which will be a new course, and that's not a requirement. It'll be a preference, so something that we'll use as a differentiator once applicants start to have it. Yeah. Yeah, so your question is if you start in part-time studies, like I said it would be possible, does it change your application outlook at all? Sorta. I think what it does is it allows somebody to start learning the kinds of things that we've talked about without having everything depend on having a space in the full-time program. So I think that's a really important aspect of it, especially if somebody's motivated. I'd hate to see somebody motivated who wants to get into the program to not be able to have an opportunity to do that. And there's, in terms of credentials at the end, there's no distinction between the full-time diploma and the part-time diploma. So there's that. applying, so if a student is able to complete, say, equivalence for all of year one or sorry, all of term one or even all of year one in the program, and either at the end of term one or the end of term two wants to apply to come in through what we would call advanced placement into the program, does it change their application outlook? We still have the requirements for 67% minimum in English and Math 12. Admission is always competitive, and like admission for coming straight into the program in term one, it depends on your academic track record as well as the number of spaces that we have, the number of applicants for those spaces, and their academic track record as well. So that's why it's sorta. Because I can't tell you from one term to the next what it's going to be, how many spaces we're going to have available for advanced placement, or what the picture is going to look like in terms of applicants to come into those spaces. So it does change the picture, but I can't break it down and quantify it for you. Yeah, so the question was, is the part-time program the same? The course content is the same, but there are things that they can do in part-time studies in the evenings that we can't do in the full-time program, and things that we can do in the full-time program during the day that can't be mirrored in part-time studies at night. The industry practicum projects that I talked about, for example, are not a component of the part-time program. So their students would be putting together the courses that they want to take according to the outlines of the program, but they wouldn't be doing it in a cohort basis with a bunch of other folks like Eli and Dustin talked about, and they wouldn't have that industry component. But the courses are either duplicates of or very closely match, for the most part, what we're doing in the full-time program. I say for the most part because there are many more course offerings available in part-time than what we do, that go a bit more broadly and in some cases a bit more deeply into some of the things that we cover in the full-time program. So that's a really long answer, but I wanted to try and provide a bunch of color for that. Yeah. Is there a very high dropout rate?
People go in thinking that because I like playing games, but playing games and writing games, I believe, is a totally different.
Thank you for pointing that out. So the question was, is there a high dropout rate? So I can't tell you exactly what our attrition rate is, and that's because the picture is really complicated. Because there are people that come into the program and that move into part-time studies and then come back into the program. One thing that I have a challenge with is students who are partway through the program and are offered full-time work. I have a challenge with that. Funnily, the students who are offered full-time jobs don't see it as a problem. And our statistics are getting better as well. So are there lots of people who attrit out of the program overall? No, in terms of numbers. And yes, there is a huge difference between playing video games and making video games. I imagine a conversation like this in a high school, somebody might go to their guidance counselor, or if they still have guidance counselors, and say, I don't know what to do after I graduate. And the counselor says, what do you like to do? And the student says, oh, I like to play video games. Oh, maybe you want to go to BCIT. Is making video games easy? If you like, yeah, if you like physics, I think a lot of people don't understand that you really need to be really good at math and understand physics, as well as, I think, a well-rounded video game developer, in my view, also understands about art as well, and things that are fun. So it's really, really hard. It's really hard. But it can be fun.
It's very fun. It's worth it. Whatever the difficulties are, it's totally worth it.
Yeah. But very different playing versus making, yeah. Other questions? Yeah.
Two questions. Going back to the part-time part,
Mm-hmm.
when you're applying for it, is it like you just pick and choose your own courses, or is it kind of like a guideline of what you can choose first?
Yeah, so when you're in part-time studies, do you pick and choose your own courses, or is there guidance? Yes, is the answer to both questions. So it's possible for a student to start in part-time studies and do the whole diploma. The way I put it is it's possible for a student to come into part-time studies, do the whole program, and never ever meet me, which you might think is a good thing. I don't know. But there's a structured path through that, right? So there's required courses, and then there's groups of electives. It depends on where you are in the program and how you're going through. So you're not just kind of taking whatever courses you want, but within the structure of that, you can choose how many courses to take during a term, or whether to take any courses during a term, as long as you're meeting the requirements of the program. It's a little bit different. A little bit different if you're looking to go through part-time studies to come into the full-time program, because then there are courses that we're looking to. There's specific courses that we consider equivalent in part-time studies, and we want to make sure that people who are planning to come into our program have those equivalent courses, so that if they want to come into the second term or the third term, that they're going to be at the same place as other students in the program. And so if you look at our website for application for advanced placement, I mentioned a couple of times that that's what that is. What you'll actually find is a link to an email address. So we ask you to contact us if that's your plan, if you want to pursue part-time studies and do advanced placement, so we can provide some guidance about which courses those are. And we ask students to do that so that we know who they are, and they don't just surprise us with an application.
Second question regarding like the laptop. Is there like a minimum spec that you recommend?
For a laptop, is there a minimum spec that I recommend? I go back to my answer. The highest spec computer you can afford, with the most RAM. Because otherwise we'll just end up talking about processor types and memory, and really you want to get as much as you can within your budget. Yeah. Sorry, speaking of laptops, what's my opinion on Macs?
Let's hear it.
Apple is a fine company with high quality products. So super high level, and please, guys, in CST, we're doing Windows development. And so students who come with MacBooks sometimes have trouble sorting that out in the CST diploma program. So I would recommend somebody, if they have budget to buy a MacBook, that they use that budget to get an even higher spec PC laptop to come into the program. In games dev, it might be a little bit of a different calculus. I don't know, what do you guys think?
So we totally, like my intake totally thought Windows, having a PC was the right move coming to this program. A year in, I think it makes no difference. A lot of the things that we're installing on our machines, even in level 1, were installed with like the click of one button on a Mac. And like us on Windows had to go into like our environment variables and like change a lot of things to the path. So a lot of things is actually way simpler on a Mac. There were a few programs that students on Macs had to set up boot camp for, which is pretty much to run like Windows virtual operating system on top of the Mac's operating system. So I would personally say if you can afford a Mac, get a Mac, because it's a way better computer, hands down, than anything that's PC. But if you think like, I don't know, like we can talk after, but that's my answer. I think Macs are way better computers, and I have a ThinkPad, so I have Windows. If I could do it again, I'd get a Mac.
Yeah, some people in my program, everyone pretty much started off with Windows laptops in the BTech program. And a year in, we had a few kids actually buy MacBooks because we were doing kind of development on Macs and development on Windows. And so it's actually easier to do development on Macs, obviously, if you have a Mac, than it is inconvenient to develop on Windows on a Mac, if you get what I'm saying. So a lot of people have sprung for the MacBooks, which is totally fine. As Eli was saying, you can dual boot Windows and Mac, where it's a lot more difficult to dual boot like a Mac operating system on a Windows laptop. So obviously Macs are more expensive, in my opinion, not worth it, but I understand the point that Eli is making.
It's,
debatable. I think both work is what I'd come down to. I think it's
Yeah.
your preference, but I don't know. I don't know about the CSE program specifically, but it sounds like it, even on CSE, it's probably a good choice.
so the answer is it varies. It depends on preference. We could have a conversation, but you end up talking about preference. Lots of our instructors use Apple products as well. Windows computer is probably easier to start with, and you can get a higher spec computer for the same price. Yeah, you could do the same kinds of things that Eli was talking about. That you'll probably learn to do anyway, right? If you get a MacBook, then you're going to have to load Windows OS and dual boot it and do all sorts of cool stuff that'll make you feel really techy. Yeah, that's what I'll say. It depends. Other questions? Oh, yeah.
I just want to say something quickly. It might seem a bit superficial, but I just thought of this when Trevor said some things that are very techy. Study computer systems, and when people ask what you do and you tell them you study computer systems, instantly gives you a few superficial, surface level bonus points for how smart people think you are, how interesting people think you are, how memorable you'll be if you meet someone at like a meetup or whatever. Yeah, there's just so many people out there who study things that aren't really as interesting.
Do you mean people look at it positively?
Yeah, very positive.
That's good to hear. You said it. I didn't say it. But then they'll also ask you, "Hey, my computer doesn't," and then you're going to have to figure that out too. You've had that? Yeah, yeah. And then nobody will remember 5 minutes after they meet you what it is that you actually do. So we're running short on time. Are we over time? So a question here, and then one back there.
For the textbooks in the course, are they still physical, or is it more of a digital focus these days?
Yes. My favorite answers are yes, and it depends. Yes, it depends. So some textbooks are physical. Many are virtual. Sometimes there's both options available. Yeah. Lots of instructors are trying to find virtual resources rather than physical ones, because the physical ones are really expensive, and you can't afford to search them. But it depends. And there was another question. Okay, cool. I think we're almost out of time, but we'll take your question too. Yeah.
Are there any resources outside of school that you might recommend to start getting familiar with coding and programming, like in the spare time before you apply after school?
Are there any resources outside of school that I might recommend? Well, I'm just going to follow up what Eli said. So Code Academy, there are many online resources available now where people can go to get exposure to coding. Code Academy's one, Udemy, Udacity, Coursera, edX, some of them are paid. Yeah. So CodePen. It's not my recommendation, it's Eli's recommendation. Reddit as a place to go to hear people who might be in the industry talking about that kind of stuff. BCIT PartTime Studies. So the foundational course in the first term of our program is called 1510. And in part-time studies, that's a combination of 1409 and 1451. So software development starting with Java. So that would be what I would recommend to somebody, what I have recommended to people that want to start. So there are many, many resources. And like Eli said, if there's something you want to know now, you Google it. So if you Google, how do I learn coding? You'll get back some version of all the stuff that we just said. Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Being in the industry for 30 years, it's not what language you learn, it's the how to code translates into any language. It's the way of thinking.
Have you been listening in to our conversations? So thanks for that. So you said being in the industry for 30 years, it's not what language you know, it's how you think about it. Yeah, and we call it computational thinking. So that's the thing that I talked about before. any kind of programming experience helps to flatten out that learning curve. Because yeah, today Java's a big deal. Tomorrow it'll be something else. You know, COBOL and Pascal used to be a big deal when those guys with the groovy mustaches were learning how to code, but not so much anymore. But it's how you solve problems, how you approach that. And yeah, creativity. I talked to a person who is a top-notch developer who called his code poetry. So if you want to start a fight, tell a developer that it's not creative work. Yeah, yeah.
It's really cool. You start with a blank page and you write a bunch of words on it, and then you build something. You click on it and get it to tell you an answer back. It's a sweet program. It's nothing like a boot camp. If any of you have considered one of the 12-week to be a web developer boot camp, is nothing like it. It's comprehensive. It's easy to get a thing, like Trevor said, and it'll teach you actually how to build things that reflect what you learn. Unlike maybe a more traditional academic 4-year
Thank you. So I think we're probably out of time. Okay, thank you for that, for clarifying that. Yeah. So so exactly, just to back up what Shebby has said. So I mentioned before that we're adding more spaces into CST, and we're going to do that downtown next fall. And CIT already is BYOD means bring your own device. CST is also going to be the same. So you're not tied down to our computing, our physical computing infrastructure anyway. It's virtualized. Okay. I don't know. No one's given me the hook. So maybe what I'll do, I'll wrap up the me talking into the mic portion, and we'll let the folks on the web go, and then myself and I guess Dustin and Eli and Elsie and Shebby will hang around for a little bit, and we can answer some more questions as well. And thanks everybody for your time and for your interest in our programs, and I wish you luck.